Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending. My name is Sid Malvia, and I am the editor-in-chief of the Night News, and I will be moderating this event on behalf of the Queens College Office of Student Development and Leadership. I have the high privilege and honor to introduce Glenn Magpantay. For over 30 years, Glenn has been a fierce advocate for the LGBTQ and the AAPI communities. He is a longtime civil rights attorney, professor, and LGBTQ plus activist. Glenn has worked on hate crimes at the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. He lobbied for successful passage of the Federal Violence Against Women Act of 1994 and Hate Crimes Act, which President Obama eventually signed into law in 2009. He knows the law and its limitations very well. He co-founded and most recently served as the executive director, of the National Queer Asian Pacific Islander Alliance. For the past few weeks, he's been supporting the community. He has counseled students, lawyers, staff of service agencies, and attorneys at the U.S. Department of Justice. He has met with district attorney prosecutors and the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. He also teaches law at Asian American Studies at Columbia University, Hunter College, and Brooklyn Law School. Without further ado, here's Glenn.
Hi, how y'all doing? So let me just get my PowerPoint together. These are my points. I'm the power. Anyway, we're just trying to figure this out. Anyway, I am so happy to be here. I have worked with Queens College and the CUNY system, my gosh, for over 30 years. You know, we produce at Queens College and at the City University of New York some of the most amazing students, the most amazing leaders for our community and for our profession. And I'm so proud to be teaching at Hunter College and to have this opportunity tonight with you all in YouTube land for Queens College Asian American Director Student Life. So I will speak with a level of authenticity, honesty. I will share my personal experiences and candor. You know, this is a serious topic, anti-Asian violence and hate crimes, but I like a little bit of humor. Oh my goodness, how can you laugh in this time? But honestly, you either laugh or you cry. And I've cried enough the past year. Those of you who may not be Asian, may not be white, may not be students, that's fine. And you are welcome to be here. And this is an amazing opportunity for us to center the Asian American experience during Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. And it is an opportunity for you to show allyship. And if you are Asian American, South Asian, Southeast Asian, and Pacific Islanders, I hope to give you an affirmation of your identity, the struggles that befall you, the struggles that have come before you, and how we can build this community together. I'm going to talk about three things. One, allyship. Two, understanding and compassion. And three, standing up and giving back. Let me just do a little bit of a grounding. For 25 years, I have been working at the intersection of law and public policy. I started in 1987. That was a long time ago. Some of y'all weren't even born then. You know, I will share my personal story that I was a victim. I'm a survivor of a hate crime, a gay bashing from 20 years ago. And I'm the victim of a hate crime, an anti-Asian incident 20 weeks ago. I have lived through some of the most horrific massacres and shootings in our community for the past 20 years. In 9/11, 2001, the targeting of South Asians, Arabs, and Muslims. The Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando, Florida, where a shooter killed 50 Latino boys and drag queens in Florida. The white supremacist shooting of Joseph Villeta and the shooting at a Jewish daycare center in Los Angeles in 1992. And 2002. And I remember doing a memorial here in New York for the Villeta family and speaking out against racist shootings. And I remember one of the aunties telling me, but Glenn, I don't know why the white supremacists would shoot us. We did nothing to them. So I figured out there was a lot of work that we need to do. And under COVID, it has been a year of violence and harassment. I made the joke a year ago that you can't cough and be Asian. I never thought that cough would turn into a casualty. As I talked about, I had helped pass the New York State Bias-Related Violence Act. I started that work 20 years ago in the legislature. It was finally signed to law in 2003. I've worked on the Violence Against Women's Act in 1994, the first piece of federal legislation that I ever helped pass, and the hate crimes, the James Byrd and Matthew Shepard Federal Hate Crimes Act, which Obama signed into law in 2009. And I have the picture with Mr. Obama to prove that I actually got it. I actually helped on this campaign. I should be the one who's most adept, most able to deal with this situation. I am counseling victims. I'm speaking to colleges and law firms. And yet I am scared too. This is a scary time, yo. We are talking about the Asian American experience. I too am Asian. And that is difficult. So I want to be very honest and transparent about that. So my outline for this presentation is I'm going to talk about 1, the Atlanta shooting and Indiana FedEx shooting and give you a broader context. 2, Asian American history and struggle for justice. If you have not taken my class at Hunter College on Asians in the U.S. or Introduction to Asian American Studies, you're going to get the whole semester compacted into 15 minutes. Those of you who are my students, take notes. It's on the final. I'm going to talk about, it is actually on the final. Look, I teach Asian Studies. What do you want? I'm going to talk about Asians as forever foreigners and how we can use this moment as a movement for change. I'm going to talk about how American values of success and working hard comes clashing with Asian cultural values. And then where do we go from here? Some tools that you as students, that you as faculty and staff, and that you who have parents who are also afraid can try to use here. So let me just talk a little bit about the Atlanta and the Indiana shootings. The news changes like every week. There's been a change, but the FBI has found a 149% surge in the overall cases of anti-Asian violence and harassment. Stop AAPI Hate, the national coalition, which so many of you have seen in your Instagram or Friendster page, reported over 6,000 cases of hate since last March. 8% of those cases are physical assaults, and most of the victims are vulnerable. 1 in 10 victims are over 60 years old. Asian American women are 2.5 times more likely to report an incident. So a number of people are asking me, a professor or attorney, why is it not a hate crime? Now, we did learn since that Atlanta will be charged as a hate crime, but the Sikh Coalition and many South Asian groups are still pushing for a hate crimes investigation in Indiana. So let me just do a little bit of law. And I helped pass these laws in Georgia, or in our system of government. The state prosecutes crimes first. Even though there's a federal hate crimes act, Georgia and Indiana must go first. And in Georgia, you have to prove the intent of bias beyond a reasonable doubt. Not only that the killer did a killing and they're dead, but the intent to kill them was motivated by bias. And he says he was just having a bad day. So it does cast some doubt and gives us some pause. Indiana is one of 5 states that does not have a criminal hate crime statute. And in 2019, the state did pass it, which allows judges in their discretion to heighten a penalty if it is motivated by bias, but the state Senate removed race, sexual orientation, gender identity from the provision of the statute. And the shooter knew in Indiana that the FedEx facility was 90% South Asian Sikhs. Now, I will tell you that if the states do not come in with a state prosecution, or even if they lose, many advocates are actually working with the Department of Justice to make sure that the Department of Justice can come in with a federal hate crimes prosecution. And so in many ways, we're just waiting for the wheels of justice to turn. But will they stop? In the case of Vincent Chin, a Chinese American guy who was beat to death by in Detroit, Michigan, by laid off auto workers. They thought he was Japanese and beat him up because of the rise of the auto industry in Japan and the decline of the American auto industry in America. Asian Americans look for protection in the law, as we all do. But the law strives for justice. It is not justice in and of itself. And in the case of Vincent Chin, his attackers never spent the night in jail and only paid a $3,000 fine. It was that moment that Asian Americans across this country stood up and said, we need to build infrastructure and a community so that we can advocate for our community needs, because the law will not always protect us. There is a broader context and a broader understanding to what happened in Atlanta and Indiana. It has been a year of anti-Asian violence since the dubbing of COVID-19 as the coronavirus. 20 years of profiling of Sikhs and South Asians as terrorists since 9/11, and the massacre at a Sikh Gurdwara temple in Oak Creek, Wisconsin in 2012. The sexism and misogyny of the crimes in Atlanta cannot be isolated and removed from this killing. In Atlanta, the shooter was going to a massage parlor where Asian American women work. And the history of sexual addiction and sex work. You know, the shooter was just saying I was having a bad day. But my gosh, what do? If you're an alcoholic, you're having a bad day, you go shoot up the owner of the liquor store? There are a number of issues that we need to deal with. But what was even more distressing was the lack of compassion, the disrespect of the harm after the killing. Some didn't even think that Indiana was a hate crime. The shooter had a history of visiting white supremacist websites, but the call to action and the crying out took a week for some groups to speak out. What do we need? To call the new strain of coronavirus the new India virus? The media spelled the victims' names wrong. The police cannot say our names properly. For Asians and Asian Americans, our names mean something. They are special. And under COVID, we are all dying from the disease. And the effect on the community is that we are scared. My gosh, I open up my Friendster account and my MySpace page, and there's a new incident. Yes, I'm still on Friendster and MySpace. I'm a little older. Asians don't Asian, yo. Anyway, as an attorney, I want to say that shootings are rare, and they are, and that the harassment is unlikely and isolated, but there is still a great fear. Some of my students are wearing hats and sunglasses to hide their Asian features. My mother, who I love very much, she's like, don't go out. Don't go to the Hanarong. Don't go to the India market. Don't go to the Hong Kong supermarket, the Filipino store. You're under lockdown again. Stay home. We are fearful of being Asian. And for some of us, that fear is akin to being ashamed of being Asian. Some of us, like me, had to go through and work through internalized racism. When I was a young person, I wanted to put porcelana all over my skin. It was a fake cream. I wanted to be white. I wanted to be American. I wanted to be accepted. And I worked through that, and I am now proud to be all of who I am. And yet this fear and what is going on continues to do that. As Asian Americans, sometimes we buy into the model minority myth. We are generally a sophisticated bunch. And now I know it's a myth, but by and large, we are educated. We go to college. All of you are in college. And so we are so shocked because we are usually not the victims. Our race will not protect us. Trump called it the China virus, but it was Koreans and Southeast Asians who were attacked. Our ethnicity will not protect us. Muslims or Sikhs, our religion will not protect us. And at our jobs, we are told that working hard and keeping your head down, as these workers did not protect them. we must stand up and we must speak out against these injustices. So, so many of us are told to seek mental health services. It's a hard time, whatever. But I want to recognize that there is significant stigma and shame in our own community of saving face with regard to seeking mental health services. I will submit, and I assigned this in a reading in my class, an article, that Asians do seek professional services. In college, if you need help, you seek an academic advisor's assistance. At work, you seek a job mentor. But when it comes to emotional problems, keep it internal. Talk to your friends or your family. But your friends are facing compassion exhaustion. They're trying to hold it together too. They're having a hard time. They can barely keep their own act together. How can they support you? And then we only seek a therapist when there's a physical manifestation. You can't sleep, you have anxiety, chest pains. I will be the first one to admit publicly that I am Asian, I'm a lawyer, and I'm I'm under the care of a therapist as well. I mean, thank goodness for antidepressants and anti-anxiety pills. And this stuff really works. Don't abuse them. Take it only with the prescription of a doctor. But really, this is a hard time, yo. If I need help, if I can't get it through it by myself, I wonder for all of you who are supporting your friends, your family, your parents, who is supporting you? Who is helping you? And can you show compassion for yourself? So no shame in seeking help from someone who can provide this assistance. So we ask, when is there a time when Asians can be centered and our experiences affirmed? That is now. That is now during Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. That is now, and that is the work that Queens College is doing with this event. And I want to commend Queens College and Dwayne and Sid for organizing this event because we can demonstrate allyship. We can demonstrate and understand Asians, especially if you're not Asian, and we can stand up for our community. So, to understand Indiana, Atlanta, and the violence that is happening today, we need to understand the Asian American history and struggle for justice in America. And some of you, if you're not foreign born, or if you did not take an Asian American Studies class with me or somebody else, you may not know this history. It's not taught in schools often. Asians and Asian Americans, we built America. And America discards us. We built the Transcontinental Railroad and united the East Coast and the West Coast and brought them together. And we were rewarded in 1882 with the Chinese Exclusion Act. Even today, graduate students, scientists, Chinese professors are being surveyed for being treasonous in spies with China. In 1942, during World War II, Japanese Americans, American citizens of Japanese ancestry, and Japanese foreign nationals were put into concentration camps because America believed that they were disloyal. And in 2001, in 9/11, the attacks against South Asians, Arabs, and Muslims for being terrorists. We are either into espionage, terrorism, or treason. We as Asians are forever foreigners. In our own lands, in our own schools, in our own neighborhoods. And this is a moment for allyship. Asians are often overlooked as people of color, and our needs are marginalized. We as Asians, we have our own interactions with police misconduct. I counseled a number of young people in Flushing who were discussing the Merchant of Venice, and the police came up and interrogated them because they thought they were part of a gang. Now, it may not be police brutality, but it is still police misconduct. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about Black Lives Matter later on in the program. Immigration. Biden put out a proposal to give 11 million undocumented immigrants a path to citizenship. That is so exciting, but it's seen as a Latinx issue. 1.5 million of undocumented immigrants in the United States are Asian. That's our community. In our focus, and companies who call it DEI, diversity, inclusion, and equity, sometimes Asian Americans are often overlooked in that. Sometimes we face imposter syndrome. And how many of you feel like that? Or you feel guilt for your success. And yet, Asian Americans across America and here in New York and in Queens College, we are standing up for our community. Asians and Asian Americans, we are the nation's fastest growing racial minority group. We are the largest segment of immigrants coming to the United States. In the next 25 years, 1 in 10 Americans will be Asian. That's what it is in New York now. But imagine, that's what Iowa will be. That's what Kansas will be in the next 25 years. And most Americans are fearful of Asians. Asians in America and Asians in Georgia were standing up. And I want to talk about, when the law comes in, when a discrete and insular minority faces discrimination, the law will come in to protect them, as they did in Brown versus Board of Education, as they did during the Civil Rights Movement. But when that minority group is beginning to gain power and influence and recognition in the political process, in the society, in the government, there is a historical social phenomenon that you don't learn in law school, that you learn in political science, that when we advance, there is a countervailing pushback towards that community. So, for example, anti-gay harassment. When the most of the incidents of anti-gay and lesbian, bisexual harassment happen? In June, during Pride Month. When we come out of the closet, somebody else wants to push us back in. The exception being people of transgender experience, where that's happening all year round, wherever you are. But I think that there are different aspects in that, particularly around sexism and transphobia. I've worked and counseled Asian Americans in Georgia since 1993, since I was a college student, like many of you all. I practiced voting rights at the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, and I have witnessed the rise of the Asian American vote, the rise of the Asian American electorate in this country, and I am so incredibly proud of everything that we accomplished. In Georgia, we delivered the Senate for the Democrats with the election of Arloff and Warlock. And that's with other communities of color, but we played a key role in that as well. And that is so incredibly exciting. And I don't mean to be partisan, but that's a big deal when we kind of turn the power of the United States Senate because of Asian Americans in Georgia. We stood up. And the conditions were right for a countervailing pushback, a response that we were becoming a threat. What is happening in Georgia and what is happening across this country in New York is that there is a response to the yellow peril, that our achievements and our successes are being met with a resistance. America often needs a scapegoat. And individually, it feels good to push someone else down. It lifts you up. And who are the victims? The victims are elderly, the most vulnerable, the ones who are most unable to speak. Even in call-out culture, when you call somebody out, it feels good to make somebody else feel like crap. To make someone else feel really terrible. And they just made a mistake. Where is the love and the grace? Where is the learning? To understand Asians is to understand that we are strangers from a different shore. It's not just the spitting, the yelling, the name calling, but the everyday microaggressions that we face that chip away at our humanity. And they're the questions that if you work, you may get at the office, the neighborhood, at the grocery store, unless you're shopping at the Hong Kong supermarket, but you don't know. And sometimes it's just a benign goal to make conversation. Where are you from? Well, I'm from Long Island. No, where are you originally from? Well, originally from Baltimore. No, you know what I mean. What's your nationality? Well, my nationality is American. You speak English so well. South Asians, I speak to my gas attendant, or I make friends with my cab driver. Oh, Vietnamese love this. Do you pronounce it pho or pho? I don't know. Why are you asking me? Koreans. Do you speak Cantonese or Mandarin? I speak Korean. Um, you know, why are those the primary questions and not a what do you take? What are you majoring in? What's your year? Where do you live? Those should be the questions that we're asked, but we're asked these dumbass questions. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. Okay, never mind. Bleep. Our parents. You know, we love our parents. They make us crazy. Mine certainly do. And, but they have sacrificed so greatly for us. When I was coming out many years ago, white people would just tell me, you just need to grow up. Your parents should mind their own business. There is no growing up in Asian American households. I mean, you don't turn 21 and become an adult. My mother, I love her, but I'm in my 50s and she still peels my shrimp at the buffet. I'm like, Ma, I'm done. I assure you, I know how to peel shrimp, but she's my mother. So she still peels my shrimp. And, she loves me and I love her. But will she ever listen to me in this time of keeping safe? In school and in the workforce and in society, as you advance and enter the job market, you will find that there are Asian cultural values that you have been told that do not work as well within the American system of advancement and achievement. These traditional Asian values have helped our people survive for 5 millennia. America is only 350 years old. England is only 900 years old, or maybe 650 years old. We have survived 5,000 years under these values. And in life and in work, we deploy them, we use them, but it does come into conflict with American values. Don't rock the boat. The society is so much better than back home. The nail that stands up gets beat down. Our parents have a real experience with government repression. That's why they came to America, to give us a better life. I mean, look at the founding of Taiwan. Look at what's happening in Hong Kong right now, or Southeast Asians in the Khmer Rouge. Our parents are the survivors. And now they have been targeted because of who they are. And remember, most of the victims of anti-Asian violence and harassment are elderly. And at work, school, classes, some of us are more quiet. We don't speak up or stand up very often because we're told don't boast. But in school and in work, we need to claim our achievements to be recognized. We're told to be authentic, to bring your full self to work. But, oftentimes you can't really do that. I worked at an Asian American organization and I was authentic. I brought fried fish in for lunch. And when I did this, everybody yelled, "Oh, PU, Glenn's having lunch." I'm like, y'all racist people. I mean, come on. I mean, you can't really be authentic. And that is racist, unfair, anti-Asian, and true. As Asians, we often work collaboratively. We work really well in teams, but our contribution in teams sometimes gets lost, overlooked, or assigned to somebody else. And a lot of us are risk adverse, but we need risk to take risks to advance. While it's true that you might fail, you also might succeed, and succeed big. Yoda told Luke Skywalker at the Jedi Temple, we have learned our greatest lessons from our greatest mistakes. And as Asians, we are told to respect our elders and to listen to them. Yoda is 900 years old. You don't get any more elder than that. If Yoda said it, I think we all really should. Asians have the capacity and the talent for leadership. All of you. But oftentimes in the business world and in the professions, Asians are often seen as the workhorse, not the show horse. We just do our job, we just study for our tests, but we don't say anything in our classes. We can oversee a team in a sports club and an organization. We have an interest in learning leadership skills, but we're sometimes seen as lacking ambition. You know, one of the reasons why I teach at Hunter and CUNY is that I myself am an alumnus of the state university system, and I've done some great, powerful work over the years. But when I started teaching at Hunter, I didn't want to do it. It was undergrads. I teach law students. I teach graduate students in Brooklyn Law School. But my arm was twisted. The Asian American Studies program brought me to class, and I taught the semester. I had a great time. But then I asked the students in the first day of class, what do you want to do? What do you want to be when you, quote, grow up? And they said, I want to be a dental hygienist. I want to be a teacher. I want to be a paralegal. I'm like, those are all fine professions. But I'm like, why be a dental hygienist when you can be the dentist? Why be a paralegal where you could be the lawyer or the partner in charge? You know, you have your whole lives ahead of you as young people. Your ambition should be so much higher. You can achieve it. And there's nothing wrong with being a dental hygienist. It's a good career. But try to be the dentist. Be the person who is in charge. And, you know, some of you, I know you are ambitious. You went to a good high school. You got into Queens College, an excellent school in the CUNY system. You are going to achieve so much. Claim it. You know, we, as Asian Americans who have achieved high stature, make the time to support others. We do vertical allyship, where we try to push each other up and pull each other up in the profession. Some of you might face a guilt of your achievement, and especially as we center to the voices of African Americans and Black folk in America. And we saw that conservatives were challenging affirmative action, saying it was anti-Asian at Harvard, right? We knew that we benefited from affirmative action as Asians. That's not what some people said. We knew that we had our own interactions, challenges, and difficulties and relationships with African American people. And some of us were ashamed for getting good grades, for going to a good high school, or being at a prestigious college like Queens College. But you worked hard to get here. You have achieved so much, and don't feel guilty about it. Know it and claim it. That is a privilege, and you are lucky that you had parents who did support you, who continue to support you, so that you can achieve your fullest potential. But what you should do is be cognizant of who else is in the room and who else is not, who did also work hard and not achieve as much as you, and what is your responsibility to accept your privilege and deploy it in the service of others, to do, as I said, to lift others up and to pull others up. That is what is so important. I have achieved so much, because I stand on other people's shoulders. Frank Wu, your president, has lifted me up, and I'm a little heavy. And now look at him, and he has helped me. My parents have lifted me up to achieve so much, and I'm so grateful to them. Who else is lifting you up? And who are you also lifting up is the question. I want to just, wrap up and talk about this incident that this moment that we're in right now, and just finish up and maybe take some questions, and definitely take some questions. So number one, we have been here before with anti-Asian violence. We might be here again. It might not stop as we continue to be the yellow peril, as America continues to find that there is an Asian invasion but we must stand up for our community. And you know what to do. Donate to Stop AAPI Hate or your local organization. And if you don't have a lot of money, think of how much you paid for that iTunes video cassette or whatever it is that y'all spend money on. Or think of how much a latte costs. And then maybe make that a donation. Volunteer on walks. Do a bystander training. Report an incident for yourselves or for others. 60% of Americans have witnessed an attack or the blaming of Asians for COVID-19, yet 60% of Americans have not spoken up. So go online, go to Stop AAPI Hate, and put in an incident. What did you find? If they won't speak up, you can speak up for our community. But then what? How do we make this moment not just a transactional moment, but a transformative one? And I want to look at 3 different lessons and experiences in Black Lives Matter, Me Too, and the LGBT rights agenda. I think when it comes to Black Lives Matter and BLM, there is no other place that we can demonstrate greater allyship. The massive demonstrations that we have seen to stop the killing of unarmed Black men and boys and young women at the hands of the police must stop. This is my kid. His name's Malcolm. And he's a Black boy. I am terrified for his safety. And I am just tired of all of the stuff that has been going on. We must stand up. And as a civil rights leader said, just keep on keeping on. Compassion and understanding. Me too. You know, the sexual harassment that women face still persists. The history of sexual fetishization of Asian women is particularly notorious. And I will admit, I have had my own transgressions too. Behavior modification as a guy is tough. You know, I'm the guy that helped pass the Violence Against Women Act in 1994. I used to lobby for that bill. And last semester in my class, you know, I was joking around and I said something to a student and it was sexist. And it was a mistake. The students stayed after class and they talked to me, but they didn't call me out. They called me in. And they gave me some love and some learning. And I took responsibility for my own transgression. You know, and I'm still learning. And I still make mistakes. But my students showed me a level of grace where I can try to be better. And it is a constant struggle. Sexism is something that we have all just grown up with, and treating women in a certain way as guys or as people who are male on the masculine side of the gender spectrum, know that we need to figure out our privilege and power. I think standing up is best demonstrated also in success in the LGBT rights movement. And there we have seen a shifting of the burden, where the agenda that I remember when I started this work in the 1990s, that's a long time ago, y'all, was we just wanted the freedom to be left alone, to do what we want between 2 consenting adults in the privacy of our home, to a shifting where we want people to recognize our relationship, that I want to be able to walk hand in hand with my partner or boyfriend or girlfriend who is the same gender, that I want a gender neutral restroom, that we have shifted from my privacy to the society and the college and the university and the company and the corporation recognizing me for all of who I am. That the world and the company and the college and the school must accommodate us. And that is the goal, to recognize all of our identities, to achieve our fullest potential. You know, Dr. King once said, judge us not by the color of our skin, but by the content of the calendar. I will say, judge us by the tenacity of our talent and our potential to progress in our professions and in our livelihood. You know, we ask when this moment of violence will pass. we were asking, when will COVID pass? We're still in it. We thought maybe the summer, maybe the spring, maybe the winter. Oh my gosh, we're still here. And it may not. But there's so much that you can do to stand up, to show allyship, to understand others in this time. You have a tremendous potential to achieve so much, the same way that I have. And, I just want to share my story that when I was coming out in the 1980s, it was the height of the HIV and AIDS crisis. Came out as a young femboy, and I was convinced I was just going to catch AIDS and die. I was the only Asian in the neighborhood. I grew up in Jamaica, Queens, not too far from Queens College. And back then, there were no Asians. My parents came over as soon as the restrictions were lifted that allowed Asian immigration. And I was the only Asian in my block. My friends, Christopher Bardio and Sean McCallie, said that my house smelled foodie, because my grandmother would fry squid. I hated piano lessons. I was bad at sports. I didn't get very good grades. I didn't think I would make it. There was no understanding. And I wanted to commit suicide. But it was women, particularly Black women, who coached me and supported me through college and got me into law school. And in law school, I graduated at the top of my class. I made law review, and I took a job at the Asian Legal Defense Fund, suing states and cities in the name of Asian Americans. I told President Obama what to do, and the president before him, and Bush. I never thought I would bring cases to the United States Supreme Court and have them heard. I never thought that I would be enforcing the Constitution of the United States, the civil rights laws of our land, to make sure that these things, these concepts, come fully to bear for the Asian American community, for America's newest members. I never thought I would teach a class at CUNY or be lecturing to you and anybody would actually listen to me. I have achieved so much because of the amazing people that Queens College, that the CUNY system, that your president, that Dwayne, that Sid has done to help me achieve my fullest potential. As Asian and Asian students, you have the weight of the world on your shoulders right now. It's a tough time. I get it. I totally get it. But we will get through this, and we will get it through this together. The Chinese character for crisis, simplified traditional, is made of two constituent parts. One, meaning danger. The other, meaning opportunity. We are in a dangerous situation right now. But what is the opportunity to make this not just transactional, but transformative? And that is what all of you will do in your future. Y'all are Queen students. You are CUNY students. You are our future, and you will be incredible. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Glenn. That was a very, very powerful conversation. It seems we don't have...
How wonderful! It's all coming into my earbuds.
For sure. I'm pretty sure everyone's clapping behind the screen. I know I was at several points during that conversation. We don't have any comments for now, but I guess you and I can have a conversation. So let's chat a little bit about how to properly engage people. So a lot of Asian Americans are raised in socially conservative households where they may be taught to, don't get involved, don't cause a fuss, just simply let the process work itself out. So what do you say to children who are raised in those environments? They see injustice, but they just don't know how to act. It's not something that they're wired with, as they believe it to be.
You no longer have the privilege not to do that. If anything that this time has shown us, if you want to be beat down and just want to go back to the country that your parents came from, you can do that. But now is the calling and the moment in which we must stand up. And so many people are. They're donating. They're going to bystander training. They're speaking out. They're saying something, they're posting something on social media, they're writing letters to elected officials. This is that moment. And what is incredible about this time is this is history. You can be a part of it. And if you just want to hang out, be on the side, it doesn't affect you. Look, I assure you, every person who hasn't been attacked was just going through their own business. And when something happened to them, did anyone say anything? You no longer have the privilege and the luxury just to sit back. So what did they say? If you see something, say something. And go to Stop AAPI Hate. Report an incident. Tell your faculty person. Email me. Email Dwayne. I don't care what it is. But speak out and be recognized because we need you now more than ever.
Thank you for that. Let's see if there are any questions. None so far. So we can talk a little bit more about, I guess let's shift gears and talk about the laws. So you talked about bringing cases to the Supreme Court, which very few attorneys have been able to do. That's a tremendous honor. So one court case that you signed on to as amici, or for those people who aren't familiar with that language, as friends of the court, people filing a legal brief in support of a cause. You filed a legal brief in support of petitioners, I believe, in United States versus Texas when DACA was being threatened. Could you talk a little bit about that and what that personally meant to you?
Yeah. I've done civil rights practice at the Asian Legal Defense Fund for like almost 20 years. And then I transitioned to CAPI at the National Queer Asian Pacific Islander Alliance, where I went into executive management. Right. I was a director of a nonprofit, and my work was to raise money, support a staff. I never thought I'd be a CEO. And I grew the organization. I never thought I would raise $1.2 million or supervise 5 staff. And it was great. And we achieved so much. And I wasn't doing a lot of legal work until Trump was elected. And I've been filing more cases suing Trump in Texas, New York, Maryland, Texas, Georgia, Illinois. And in that case, Trump tried to cancel DACA. And we joined in that case to tell the story of LGBT Asian DACA recipients. So many of the narratives of DACA recipients are Latinx, are not LGBTQ. We wanted to highlight the Asian experience and the LGBTQ experience. Most of the world's Muslims live in Asia. So many of us who are DACA recipients are from Asian countries. We fought for DACA, especially in the Korean community, the South Asian community. And for gay people, LGBTQ+, the world is still a dangerous place. If Trump canceled DACA, it would not just be deportation, but for some people, a prison sentence. And so what we needed to do was litigate not only in courts of law, but also in courts of public opinion. And we used our brief to educate the court and also educate the public about our lives, about the intersectionality of us, how DACA recipients are Asian and gay and persecuted. And we are South Asian and East Asian, South Asian from the Pacific Islands. We are Koreans. We can be all of who we are, and that is a narrative that we wanted to put forth in popular culture, and I'm so proud of that work. And it was actually students from CUNY who helped on that case, who fought for DACA, who signed petitions, who spoke out, so that if you are a DACA recipient, that you can be here today. And look, Biden was elected, canceled the cancellation, and reinstated DACA, so that's really exciting. But we could still have another president who could try to cancel it and be more effective than Trump. It is time that we stand up. It is time for Congress to enact laws that will protect us and all of our communities. And not just DACA recipients and dreamers, but the original dreamers called mom and dad or our grandparents. Those are the ones who we need to stand up for now.
Very well said. So, while on the topic of law, what would you say to people who are considering getting involved with activism for people and they're kind of torn in between going to law school or they'd rather just, focus all of their attention on a community center and do work there? What would you say is more impactful? Do you believe that in your experience as an attorney, it's much more impactful in terms of the long run, or would you say there's still noble work in being a small grassroots organizer?
So I have two answers, and it really depends on my audience. If I am talking to students at Columbia, NYU, Harvard, or Yale, and they tell me that they want to go to law school, I tell them, don't go to law school. Become a community organizer. Do what Obama did, which is he was an organizer. Because the law does not facilitate broad based change. And if you believe that the people should rise up and claim from government and demand from government what we deserve, that's the work of an organizer. That's the work of a nonprofit. That is the infrastructure. And so don't go into law, go into organizing and change the world. Now, I also have to recognize that the law is overblown with people who don't look like us, who go to CUNY. My class, mostly women, people of color. The white straight males are first generation immigrants from Eastern Europe. And so at Hunter and at Queens College, I actually would say, you look like the clients and the community that we serve. You should go into law school because law does give you a level of credibility that you wouldn't get otherwise. The reality is, and I'm sorry for saying this, but women and people of color are not judged by the same standards as everybody else. We have to work harder. We have to prove ourselves for the same amount of pay and the same amount of respect. We live in a racist and sexist society, and it's not fair. And a legal degree does give us a level of credibility so that we can compete even more. So while I do not, and I teach law, I teach at Brooklyn Law School, right? While I would usually not suggest and encourage people to go to law school because I think it's a horrific profession that is more about white supremacy and property and monetary value. I would say CUNY, those of us who have to struggle so much more to make it, you should become a lawyer and go to law school. And if any of you want to chat, email me. I'm at Hunter College. You can find me. Just say, hi, professor. I listened to your talk. It was great. I want to go to law school. Let me coach you. Let me support you because someone did that for me too. And you may not know what you want to do. That's okay. I teach a great class at Hunter where I teach it like a law class. It's Asian American civil rights in the law. And I teach it the way that I would teach a second year law class. And my Hunter students, my CUNY students do so well. We can do the same thing at Queens College. We'll set it up as a Zoom. I'll do Socratic method. We'll do the case dialogue. I'll give you a case. And I believe so many of you can do that. You are competitive beyond your belief. If you get pushed by your professors and teachers and you don't break but tolerate it, you'll get there.
Wise words. We still have a couple questions, so I guess I'll ask a couple questions and then we'll just we'll end the event. So next question is, I guess this is sort of a personal one for you. What do you want to be remembered for? You've done extensive legal work. You've done so much for the LGBTQ community and AAPI, and you're still doing that. But what would you want to be remembered for? What do you envision your legacy being?
That's a hard question not to answer, but you're asking it after COVID. I've had 5 deaths in my family, friends, and mentors. I mean, I'm older, right? So some of my mentors were in their 70s and 80s. My parents are older. And I really thought of what happens if I get it and what would happen. I kind of want to be remembered for the person who is that great and amazing leader that everybody knows and loves, who took the time out to support people who are nobody, really. People who are just like, they're an undergraduate sophomore at Queens College or at City College or Hunter. And I gave them a lot of time to talk, to listen to their hopes and dreams, and see how I can coach them. And I do that, and I'm generous with my time. Not because I'm a full-time faculty member and I get paid to do that. I'm adjunct. I'm totally like, not a full-time. I'm a lawyer by practice, but because somebody else did that for me. They took the time to listen to my cockamamie questions. I did my research, so I wasn't wasting their time. I Googled them and was prepared to answer my questions. But somebody helped pull me up and push me up. I want to be remembered as that person who was somebody's hero that helped them too get through a difficult situation, learn they can achieve more. And my goal and request is that you then do that for somebody else. Pay it forward, right? Because someday all of you will become incredible. You'll be parents, you'll be corporate executives, you'll be legislators. My gosh, I have a former intern who is the secretary, who is like, a state senator in Michigan. Congresswoman Grace Meng, she's the volunteer for me. Look at all these people, and I'm still stuck at Hunter. No, I'm kidding. I've had people who run for office and have achieved so much, and I'm so proud of them. And that's what I want to be remembered for.
Oh, we have a question here. This is from Jacob Chen. Jacob says, what would you say to students who are interested in getting mentors about what they can do to improve their odds of building a better mentor-mentee relationship?
Keep at it. Jacob, do I know you? You Zoom bomber, you. No, it is a Jacob Chen that I know. He works at the Bar Association, and we've been talking about creating a mentorship mentor program. I mean, maybe it's not the Jacob Chen, and we have no idea who you are. But if you are, we've been talking about creating a mentor-mentee relationship, which is actually difficult to get off the ground because it takes a lot of tenacity. It takes a commitment. And what I would say is creating a structure so that if you find somebody who can mentor you, but also just learn advice. And Jacob Chen, if he's the Albany Asian American Bar Association, Jacob Chen, you are the person who has also lifted me up. You are also my mentor. And he's younger than me because he showed me different things. He's, taught me about like what life is like in his profession, in his practice area. And I stand on his shoulders. And so you don't have to look for a formal mentor-mentee relationship. You could just talk to somebody older, more experienced, or differently experienced from you and rap with them. Ask them questions and ask them to take be considerate of their limited time because we're all very busy. If you don't get an email on the first run, if you don't get a response to that first email them again. You know what it's like. But it's all right. And so that's what I think that we should do. That it does take a lot of effort as the mentor and as the mentee. Thank you, Jacob. Oh, he says thank you. Can you see his response? Jacob is incredible. He ran a great program for the Bar Association on gay Asian leaders and elected officials. Jacob, you are my hero. Professor Wu, President Wu, are you on this? You are my hero. Look, you have an Asian professor and college president at CUNY. How freaking excited are we all? And you probably still wonder why you pay such a high student activity fee and all the problems that happen at Queens College. And you should hold President Wu accountable, but know that he is incredible. And he is achieved so much. Dwight is on this call. He too. Push him to do more programming, but he does great work for all of you. Thank you. And who is this person? Ari. Oh, hi, Ari. Asian American Resource Institute joined their dinner and our lecture in June on LGBT Pride Month. Elizabeth Lee. Oh, hello. Hi, Ms. Lee. Are you one of my students? Look, I have all these Zoom bombers. Everyone I told to join, they all join. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. What else, Sid? Go.
What else? Let's see. There's so many topics to see. To talk about. I guess we can shift gears and we can talk about the polarizing political climate we're in and the tune that we've been hearing a lot that, it's doom all, end all. Things are becoming more conservative, as you can see from the state legislatures, the courts, and whatnot. So I guess we can rewind and talk a little bit about the note that you mentioned about the Mickey brief that you signed on to regarding DACA. So fast forward a year when President Trump took office in 2017. This probably might have been when you were more legally active. As you may recall, he issued an executive order that prohibited specifically people of Muslim descent from entering the country, and this was challenged in the Supreme Court, and ultimately the policy and the executive order was allowed to hold up. So in her dissent, Justice Sotomayor, she noted that this decision was similar to Korematsu versus United States, where the Supreme Court allowed the legal internment of Japanese Americans after World War II. So would you say that this conservative jurisprudence, do you think that this is a serious threat to the prosperity and freedom of Asian Americans, or do you think this is merely an obstacle that can be overcome?
Yes and yes. Wait, don't go anywhere. No, I'm serious. I'm still here. Why? Because here's the brief that I filed in that case, challenging the Muslim ban on behalf of the LGBT Asian and South Asian Muslim community. And again, we use that brief. I'm not kidding. Yeah, I had to get it on the shelf though. Oh, wow. Fine. We use it again as the opportunity to tell the narrative of gay Muslims. And you're right, Sid. We are in a time that we're moving towards more conservatism and factionalization. And I'm very fearful of this time. But I will tell you two things. Number one, I lived through Reagan, who none of y'all remember, but so much of the liberal and change infrastructure of America collapsed under Reagan. My parents lived through a war. My mother and grandmother had to flee for the mountains when the Philippines was occupied by Japan. And my mom had to sell biko, dessert, to make ends meet. And she learned Japan in first and second grade because of the occupation. You want to talk about oppression? I mean, I'm just getting called like some racist name on the street, which, not to delegitimize you, it sucks, it's awful, it's terrible, but really, our parents put things into perspective sometimes. I was fearful I was just going to catch AIDS and die. Worse, I wanted to kill myself. So this moment, I do not know if it will pass. I suspect it might not. And that is why speaking out and getting involved is more important than ever. Because again, as we achieve more, as we do more, there is a countervailing pushback to that success. And we need to change hearts and minds. And that's where I actually also want to talk about the gay experience, is that the LGBTQ community has been tremendous in building allyship, where you don't even have to know a gay person. You support same-sex marriage. I mean, maybe your parents don't, right? We need to have a time in America and in our communities that whether they know someone who's Asian or not, they know our history and what we have contributed to this country and land. And as Asians, I honestly feel we need not to call out, but to speak out. And I want to nuance that by saying many people of goodwill make mistakes. I assure you, many of you on this call have messed up too. I'm going to say a different word with an F. But calling out is just not helpful anymore. But pointing out in the spirit of love and learning, in the spirit of growth, in the spirit of doing it better next time, I'm still going to be here. I've messed up and done silly, bad things when I was a kid 20 years ago that I would never do today. I was quite naughty. But, oh my God, did I just admit that on like video stream? But the reality is, I learned from them. I said, I'm sorry. I've made mistakes. I've paid a price and I've gotten better. And so rather than canceling and calling someone out, call them in the spirit of love and learning. I too believe that these racist, anti-whatever people, they're just confused. And if anything, I feel sorry for them. I don't hate them. I feel mercy and pity because no one showed them a better way and their hearts are filled with hate. Our culture and our religions and our faiths, whatever that faith might be, teaches us something different. And we should profess that in the spirit of compassion, allyship, and in standing up. There's another question. I can't see it.
Oh, there is, but unfortunately, that is prime. Oh, we can do this one last question, then I believe we have to wrap up. The question is, did you feel like you had to do double duty during law school, learning the, as you noted, white supremacist / property obsessed version of things in law school, and a people's history version on your own?
Oh, totally. Law school sucks. It is indoctrination of white supremacist culture. My gosh, it comes from the crown of England. I mean, it just doesn't get any more white supremacist than that. And if you believe in Audre Lorde's quote that you cannot dismantle the master's house or the master's tools, don't go to law school, become an organizer. I like to see evilness in its natural setting to see how to deal with it and how to find its weaknesses. And so, yes, law school, I is totally doing double duty. Yes, it is white. It is supremacist, property-based oppression. It is not based on people speaking out. It is about you as a lawyer speaking for others because they're too dumb to speak for themselves. They don't know as much as you do. I am lawyer. I am amazing, and I will save you. That is what the profession teaches us. Now, there's a value in being in the nation's top 2% of American society. And those of us who are at the top 2%, those of us who are lawyers, deploy that privilege responsibly. What did Peter Parker say? With great power comes great responsibilities. As a lawyer, I can strike down a law. I can enforce a law. I can put people in jail. I can stop them from getting thrown out. I can throw them out from their home. I have that power as a lawyer. And I have a responsibility as a lawyer to use that power judiciously in the service of others, pro bono publico, yo, and as a member of a learned profession to teach others. And so do it. Have a great time. Go through your law school 12-step program in healing because you'll still face trauma afterwards. I'm still going through my law school 12-step program. And then you find really cool people like me and Jacob and Yuni Lee and Ari that will support you to heal from the law school, American law school pedagogy. I'm sorry if you are, a law faculty, not to throw my colleagues under the bus, but it's awful. And change the world for the better. Make the law what it is actually supposed to be, justice and fairness for all. What it's supposed to be, but not yet what it is.
Thank you so much. So thank you, Glenn, for coming out to speak to our audience, and thank you to our audience for being engaging and asking wonderful questions. This has been a wonderful event. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to Glenn. His email, as he mentioned, you can publicly Google since he's a faculty member at Hunter College, and you can feel free to reach out to him. Thank you so much.